Welcome back. In this section, we will now cover using the scenario flow to add interactions to your objects within your environment. So in order to go there, first you're going to want to go to the Scenario Flow tab by clicking this tab here. In the Scenario Flow tab, you'll see that you do not have any objects, but instead you'll be working here with states and transitions. I'm going to be covering in this section the states and how to navigate and move around within this space. So first, so we can orient ourselves, let's create a state. Go to here and click the plus state button. This will create the state here, and if you left click again, that will drop it in your environment. You can move about here by either zooming in by scrolling your mouse wheel in or out, using the middle mouse wheel in order to drag your view, or if you'd like, you can use the pan tool, which will let you left click in order to move about. This is typically helpful if you are using this on a mouse pad. And lastly, you can go to the delete tool to delete any states that you have created. Okay. Now first, we're going to want to actually create a state and keep it, in this case. And here, you can see some various information that has come up about your simulation. First, this entry state, actually, let's create a second one, just so you can see as an example. So first, state 0, in comparison to state 1, has this white background around it. And you can also see here, in entry state, it is set to state 0. This is where your simulation will begin. When you first launch, it will begin in your entry state. In order to change that, you can use this drop down here and change where the state is starting. Okay? If you select a state, you'll see it has this blue outline around it. Over here in the upper right hand corner, you can also see which state you are in, as well as other information of state actions, hints, and settings that you're able to set here. We'll only be working with state actions in this case, but there are other things that you can do here. Next is the states or actions that you're going to be able to add. There's a lot of them, and I will be covering each one as I add them for the first time here, but for a comprehensive list of what these are and what functionalities they can provide for your simulation, please reference our user's guide. Now, lastly, after you have found the state you would want to add, whether it's display message or anything else, you'll hit the Create button. This will add it as well as its properties to this. Functions can be added either when you enter a simulation, or when you enter a state, or when you exit a state. Let's add just one more randomly. Okay, so focusing here, you can see based off of this green indicator, I have two actions on my state machine, or on my state. The first is display message, and the second is checklist. By their green tab here, I can tell they will happen when I enter. I can click this button here in order to rearrange this and move them around, and you can see this is reflected on the right here. You can also rearrange them by clicking on this button here, which will let you move them around here as well. And this is reflected here. The red tab over here indicates that that's happening in my exit state actions. This will happen when I leave this state, in this case. We will be utilizing both of these in the creation of the simulation, and if you need to know what is happening, this is where you first enter, this occurs, and when you leave, these occur. To delete a state that you have created, simply hit the X button and it will be deleted from the list. So, moving on from there, we're going to also rename these states to be something more helpful for our users and for us to keep better track of. So in order to rename a state, just type in a name or select in the area here and type. this is going to be our introduction. Next, we're going to go here, and I'm going to create multiple states here. This one will be used gloves first, and this one will be used glasses first. Now keep in mind, as we are starting an introduction, we're going to be beginning here. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to go to this drop down here, and we're going to want to add a display message. Okay, so here you're able to type a message to the user that they will see. It's able to have a header, a message, and you're able to change the button text that is present, if that is of value to you. In this case, I'm going to just have it say, welcome to a virtual chemistry lab. We will be exploring and learning about the flames test. Before we begin, wear gloves and safety glasses. To help our users identify these objects, we are going to highlight two objects. Those objects being the safety glasses and the glove box. So with this highlight function that I've added here from the list, if I click the Do Highlight check marks, the object will be highlighted to the user within the scene. So now they will receive this direction as we are putting in our environment, and these two objects will be highlighted. Next, we're going to want to go to the Exit State Actions, and we're going to want to use the highlight function 2 times again. So highlight, and highlight once more. Select our safety glasses and our gloves. And in this case, we want it to remove the highlight. So rather than being selected, we'll keep these unselected. In this way, we have our display message. We're highlighting two objects, and when we leave our introduction state, it will unhighlight both objects. Next, we're going to go to the Used Glove First section. And here, we're going to want to add a feedback log. Now, a feedback log is information that is not given to the user when they perform the action. In our case, as an example, the display message will be shown to the user immediately upon getting to the state. But a feedback log is something that you're able to track and give to the user whenever you would like to make it displayed to them. This is more of a performance notes in this case on how the user did and what actions they may have taken. In this case, we're going to take note that they used the gloves first. Okay? And for the same thing, we're going to go to the use glasses first. We're going to say they used the glasses first. So now, if we look at these simulations afterwards, we will know which of these two objects that will be available for the user to utilize at either time, which one they used first. Okay. Next, we're going to go over here, and we're going to add another state. This one I'm going to call Turn on Bunsen Burner. And for this one, we're going to utilize the Play Audio function. Play Audio is very useful for if you want to play a sound clip for the user when they reach here. In this case, we're going to play a bell chime. You're able to set a volume between 0 and 1. It is a float, and this is how loud it will be. You can preview the audio by hitting this button here, and you can choose whether it is originating globally or based on a virtual object. By having Wait Until Finish selected, it means that the simulation will not move forward until after the audio has finished playing. Next, we're going to add a display message. Okay, we're going to say to the user to use the Bunsen burner to light up the burner. And we're going to be okay with this. Next, we are going to add another state action where the user can grab the spatula. Okay, here we're going to play another bell chime audio. And we are able to change the grab state of the spatula if we wanted to at this point. This is up to you on how you prefer to structure your simulations when providing guidance. So if you have your spatula initially set to grabbable, you don't need to do this, or you could choose to do this in a different way. I'm going to make it so that my spatula was not able to be interacted with until this moment. So I'm going to go to Set Attribute, which lets you change either default or custom attributes of objects directly. So with the Set Attribute function, I'm going to first select Virtual Object, going to select the entity of my spatula, and I'm going to change the grabbable, don't be confused with grabbed, but grabbable function here, which is second from the bottom, and set it to true. Lastly, I'm going to give a display message to my user telling them to grab the spatula. I realize now I did forget one step. So, for our assets, you're also able to change the default properties here. For our white cylinder here, I want to select it because we are using this as a placeholder for gathering samples. We're going to want it by default to not be visible, and we're going to want it attached to our chemistry spatula. So I'm going to select that, and we're going to have it placed in the scoop and move it to its location. Less important that it is there or not, because it's not going to initially be visible, but you can see here how it's going to be placed. Okay. So with this, we have told them to grab the spatula, and next we'll tell them to gather a sample. Okay. So again, we're going to use positive reinforcement here. Play audio one more time of a bell chime. And give them a display message for collide the spatula with the sample you want to test. Okay. Here we're going to set an exit condition here. We're going to go to Set Attribute, and we're going to find our white cylinder. We're going to find its visible attribute and set it to true. All right. Next, we're going to add other things to gather. So here we're going to do gather strontium, as well as one immediately after for burn sample 1. Okay, so for gathering strontium, on our enter state actions, we want a display message telling them to carefully place their spatula sample into the flame and that the color of the flame will change depending on the sample on the spatula. Okay. Now for burning the sample of strontium, we're going to give a different explanation for each of these. But first and foremost, you're going to want to create this in the following method. First, we're going to go to Set Attribute, and we're going to create 2 of these. And what we're going to do is we are going to make our red flame visible, because when you burn strontium, the flame will be red. We are going to change our default flame from visible to not visible, because we don't need it visible at this time. And we are going to make it so that our white cylinder that we are burning is also no longer visible. Now, I'm going to use a different method of providing information to the user. We could continue with display messages and go through that process, but we have a virtual person in our environment. In order to have him give the information, we're going to want to use the speak action. So by hitting the speak action here, you'll create it, and you're able to type in the information of what it is you want him to say. In this case, I'm going to have him say, strontium gives crimson red color in the flames test. It is due to the excitation of electrons by the thermal energy, which is then followed by de-excitation of electrons to ground state, along with liberation of light in the visible range. If you have multiple virtual people in your space, you'll be able to select which one here. As we only have Dr. Arnold, that would be the only one. Next, you would choose the video output type or audio output type, whether it's text-to-speech or your own uploaded audio. If it is text-to-speech, you would choose a voice suitable for this. And you can select from our options here. I'm going to select Justin. You are then able to preview what this audio will sound like when spoken by using this button here. Let's listen.
Strontium gives crimson red color in the flame test. It is due to the excitation of electrons by the thermal energy, which is then followed by de-excitation of electrons to ground state along with liberation of light in the visible range.
If you don't care for that voice, you're able to adjust it here, based off of what it is we have, and take a listen again. Next is what animation will occur. If it is random, it will go from any of the animations that would be appropriate based off of his current state, typically standing, or sitting based off of the state that he's in, and will go through any of these. If you do not want an animation, in this case I do not, I'm going to select none. But if you'd like to have him do a particular type of speech pattern or animation while speaking, you can select from there. And lastly, we want the simulation to wait here until the animation, or until he is finished speaking. And here we're going to make the flames, or we're going to hide our red flame and bring our original flame back again, as the sample will have finished its burning. So we go to our default flame, make it visible, and go to our red flame and make it not visible, reversing the process that we did here at the top. All right. Next, we're going to add one more state over here. We're going to call this clean spatula. We're going to add a display message. where we're going to tell them to clean their spatula before gathering their next sample. We are going to highlight our clear liquid here, and when we leave, we are going to unhighlight our clear liquid. So we go to Highlight, Clear Liquid, and have that not selected. Lastly, we're going to create two more states here. Nope. One will be labeled quiz, and then it will be answer incorrect and answer correct. Followed by our conclusion. I will cover making the quiz in a minute, but lastly, for our conclusion, we are going to want to create a display message here saying this concludes our simulation, and we're going to want to show our feedback panel at this point. So we go here and click Show Feedback Log. Okay. Oh, I didn't. There we are. Okay. So with this, we have the larger portion of our states here, and I'm going to show you how to easily add the remaining actions for populating here with the rest of our information. So sometimes, if you have very similar actions and you don't want to recreate states from scratch, you can copy them or use them as a template to move forward with. So if you right-click a state, you can copy a state, which will create a copy of it and drop it here. I'm going to do the same with this one here, and I'm going to copy it one more time. Okay, so now I can rename these to what it is I would like them to be. In this case, gather copper and gather potassium. This display message is written in such a way this can be true for all of them, but my burning of the samples I would need to adjust. I'm going to take it from burn sample 2 and burn sample 3. Now, while for all of these I want to show and hide the default flame the same, the color that it burns will change slightly. So in this one I am making the red flame visible. In this case I would want yellow-green to be visible when burning copper, so let's change that here. The explanation of why changes, such as the halogen present in the compound reacts with copper to form a volatile copper halide, which imparts a blue or green color to the flame. And again, we want to change this from red to yellow-green, being visible to false. For our final sample of potassium, we want it to hide our purple flame down here and show it up here. And the message for when burning potassium is colors or in white, but when it is heated, it produces a violet flame due to the excitation of the electrons to the higher energy orbitals. Potassium burns with light purple colored flame. And with that, we would have finished the creation of our state machine layout. You can experience the simulation now, but all we will get is our display message and the highlights, because currently there is no connection between any of our states. Welcome back. Here we will create the connections between our state actions with the use of transitions. So in order to create a transition, you have several methods at your disposal. First is you can click the plus transition button, which will then change it to select origin. Here, if you select a state, you'll see it will change to select destination, and you can select a destination. This will create a connection between your two states. Also, you can right-click on a state, and you can click Add Transition, which will automatically select it as the origin and select a destination, thus creating a destination. Now, transitions between states can be populated with triggers, of which there are various types. And I will go through the ones that we will be using in detail, but for a full explanation of each, please refer to our user guide. It can be populated with conditions, which is based off of the state of your simulation. Both, neither, or any of the above, or any combination there within. You're able to populate it with either one trigger, or as many conditions, or no conditions, or anything else. In our case, we are going to add a use trigger here. Now, a use trigger, when created, lets you select an object within this. You're able to search here. So I'm going to do the gloves. You're able to use a text box indicator or highlight it when it is hovered over. And a use action is performed on desktop by clicking on the object. In VR or other methods of modality, the interaction may vary. For example, in VR, you would point at the object with your controller and use the trigger. In augmented reality, as an example, you would locate it with your cursor using your eye, and you would pinch in most cases. That is how you would use an object. A lot of these triggers are abstracted from the actual interaction here so that it works regardless of what platform or device it is on. You would use this for pressing buttons or other things of that nature is where use is most commonly utilized. For the connection between introduction and using gloves first, we're going to have it be using the medical gloves. For using glasses, we're going to use the same trigger of use, but in this time, we're going to type in glasses. So now, if they use the gloves, they'll go here, and if they use the glasses, they'll go here. Now you can see here that much like a flowchart design here, we've connected these two, and they are branching, meaning that if you go from introduction to use glasses first, you will never reach use gloves. This is intentional in our design. We are going to use both before it is ending, but you're able to create branches, loops, or any other logical design utilizing this flowchart. It's rather straightforward and easy to understand by utilizing this to create complicated logic in an easy to understand manner, where all of these will be connected and flow together. So with that, let's connect these states together. And just like we did before, we're going to connect these with use actions. But this time, we're going to do the inverse. So you've already used the gloves, so this time you have to use the glasses, and vice versa. Okay. Next, we're going to connect the turning on Bunsen burner with grabbing the spatula. We're going to make this a use action of the Bunsen burner. All right. Now we're going to add this transition here, but rather than use, we're going to use grab. So the grab one is when the object is grabbed by the user, they will then be able to move forward. In this case, we're going to use chemistry spatula. Now, in order to grab an object, in desktop, you can hover over it with your mouse and press E or left-click the object. In VR, you would use the grips. And because the grab type of our spatula, being basic, when you grab the object, it will go to your hand. As mentioned before, there are different grab types which behave in different ways, but this is the behavior that we're looking for here. Next, we are going to add the 3 connections between our gathering of samples. 1, 2, 3. Okay? And for these, we're going to want to use collide. So collide is when 2 objects are pushed into each other or come into collision. In this case, it would be between our second function here, the strontium, and our spatula. Here, again, between our third object, in this case, and our chemistry spatula again. And lastly, our final one with our chemistry spatula. If you want to rename the state actions from their default, where it's just saying use, and you want to be more specific, you can type here what it is you would like it to be. So for example, use medical gloves. And you can see that is reflected here. Use safety glasses. You're able to type in what information you want here if you find that useful for you for keeping track of it and going through this here where the default information is not clear to you. Just like you can rename your states, you can also rename your transitions. Continuing forward, we're going to want to connect all of these with collide actions. This time between our Bunsen burner and our chemistry spatulas. So with this, we have 3 different ways of going through this process and completing it here. Okay. Now in this case, all of these transitions are going to be empty because we want us to move into the action for them to go clean the spatula after it is finished burning. We set up the process here to where it'll burn, show the color, and give the explanation here. Next, we can add a transition between these to where it will go here, which will be utilizing a condition. I'll help you define that in a minute. But we also want to put this back to the origin, back here where you gather the sample. Okay, here. Now, in order to utilize these conditions, you are able to create these in such a way to where we want the user to have gathered all 3 samples at some point. So we are going to add these functions here. So first, I'm going to go to my Bunsen burner. I'm going to create a custom attribute. 3 of them, in fact. All of them will be of the type true, false. And I'm just going to name it taken sample 1. 2, and 3. By default, I'm going to have all of them be false. And I'm going to go to this Gather Strontium section, go to Set Attribute, create it, go to Virtual Object, go to my Bunsen burner, select my attribute, and I can see my taken sample 1 is here, and I'm going to set it to true. We're going to do this for my other two states as well. But for each one, we are going to change which sample has been taken. Okay. Now here, I'm going to add a condition. If I look at this, I can type in my burner and say you are only allowed to go to this quiz node if you have taken all 3 samples. So you've taken sample 1, taken sample 2, and taken sample 3. And here, I'm just going to add a wait trigger, which means that you will move forward from here back to the beginning if 1 second has passed. Because of our situation, if you have gone through this process here, and you've already gathered your 3 samples, it will move you through here immediately. I'm sorry, you don't want to do this with a wait, you want to do this with a collide. Where you are cleaning this with beaker 1 and the chemistry spatula. Okay, my mistake. So here you are going through this, where you gather the sample, you select which sample you would like to gather, it will burn when you collide it with the Bunsen burner, based off of which one you did. After it finishes burning, you'll be asked to clean the spatula, and you'll clean it by colliding it here. If you've gathered all 3 samples, it will move you into our quiz section, which is currently empty. Now, let's talk about creating quizzes. So, for creating a quiz, you are able to go here, go to the drop-down, or I should say creating a quiz question, and you would hit Create. Here you can make it multiple choice or single choice. We will do single choice in this case. And you are able to make it spoken, rich text, place it in space, or anchor it in the environment. And we're going to go here. So, if I were to type a question here, based on what you learned today, what color would a sample of copper burn? And you can type in whatever you would like, orange, green, purple, red, as an example. In our case, green would be the correct answer. And if I hit save, I've now created my quiz, which I can see here. Now to connect these, I would just add a transition between each. If I want to make a condition of where I end up based off of the information that I gave in the quiz, I can go here, hit the drop down, and I can see question is here. Now, I only have one quiz question present, so I don't have any here, but if I ever got confused, I can see the question identity of 0 is here. If I were to have a second one, I would see when I go to question, I would see a question of 0, 1, etc. And so here, I want them to go to answer incorrect, if correct is equal to false. And here, for my question, if correct is equal to true. Now again, I can use a display message. And go, I'm sorry, that isn't correct. Copper, when heated, burns green. Versus display message, that's correct. Copper, when exposed to heat, burns green. And lastly, we would connect these to the conclusion, which will tell them this concludes our simulation and show them the feedback log. So with this, you will have created your entire simulation from start to end, which you can then go through with all the processes that we have covered here. You can either save by hitting the button here and click play from here, or you can go to the shortcut version and go through this here. In the next video, I will go through the simulation as we have created it now and show you what it is we have designed. Thank you.